Okay, where am I at? Chapter 22, Artemis's Nature and Deeds. Artemis, Apollo's sister, goes armed with bow and arrows and, like him, has the power both to send plagues or sudden death among mortals and to heal them. She is the protectress of little children and of all sucking animals, but she also loves the chase, especially that of stags. B. One day, while she was still a 3-year-old child, her father Zeus, on whose knees she was sitting, asked her what present she would like. Artemis answered at once, "Pray give me eternal virginity, as many names as my brother Apollo, a bow and arrows like his, the office of bringing light, a saffron hunting tunic with a red hem reaching to my knees, 60 young ocean nymphs, all of the same age as my maids of honor, 20 river nymphs from Artemis in Crete to take care of my buskins and feed my hounds when I am not out shooting, all the mountains in the world, and lastly, a city where you care to choose for me, but one will be enough because I intend to live on mountains most of the time. Unfortunately, women in labor will often be invoking me since my mother Leto carried and bore me without pains, and the fates have therefore made me patroness of childbirth." C. She stretched up for Zeus's beard, and he smiled proudly, saying, "With children like you, I need not fear Hera's jealous anger. You shall have all this and more besides. Not one, but 30 cities, and a share in many others, both on the mainland and in the archipelago, and I appoint you guardian of their roads and harbors." D. Artemis thanked him, sprang from his knee, and went first to Mount Leucas in Crete, and next to the ocean stream, where she chose numerous 9-year-old nymphs for her attendants. Their mothers were delighted to let them go. On Hephaestus's invitation, she then visited the Cyclops on the island of Lipara and found them hammering away at a horse trough for Poseidon. Brontes, who had been instructed to make whatever she wanted, took her on his knee, but disliking his endearments, she tore a handful of hair from his chest, where a bald patch remained to the day of his death. Anyone might have supposed that he had the mange. The nymphs were terrified at the wild appearance of the Cyclops and at the din of their smithy. Well, they might be, for whenever a little girl is disobedient, her mother threatens her with Brontes, Argus, or Steropes. But Artemis boldly told them to abandon Poseidon's trough for a while and make her a silver bow with a quiver full of arrows, in return for which they should eat the first prey she brought down. With these weapons, she went to Arcadia, where Pan was engaged in cutting up a lynx to feed his bitches and their whelps. He gave her 3 lop-eared hounds, 2 party-colored and 1 spotted, together capable of dragging live lions back to their kennels, and 7 swift hounds from Sparta. E. Having captured alive 2 couple of horned hinds, she harnessed them to a golden chariot with golden bits and drove north over Thracian Mount Haemus. She cut the first pine torch on Mysian Olympus and lit it at the cinders of a lightning-struck tree. She tried her silver bow 4 times. Her first 2 targets were trees, her third a wild beast, her fourth a city of unjust men. F. When she returned to Greece, where the Amnesian nymphs unyoked her hinds, rubbed them down, fed them on the same quick-growing trefoil from Hera's pasture, which the steeds of Zeus eat, and watered them from golden troughs. G. Once the river god Alpheus, son of Thetis, dared fall in love with Artemis and pursue her across Greece, but she came to Latrine in Elis, or some say as far as the island of Ortega near Syracuse, where she daubed her face and those of her nymphs with white mud, so that she became indistinguishable from the rest of the company. Alpheus was forced to retire, pursued by mocking laughter. H. Artemis requires the same perfect chastity from her companions as she practices herself. When Zeus had seduced one of them, Callisto, daughter of Lycaon, Artemis noticed that she was with child. Changing her into a bear, she shouted to the pack, and Callisto would have been hunted to death had she not been caught up to heaven by Zeus, who later set her image among the stars. But some say that Zeus himself changed Callisto into a bear and that jealous Hera arranged for Artemis to chase her in error. Callisto's child, Arcas, was saved and became the ancestor of the Arcadians. On another occasion, Actaeon, son of Aristus, stood leaning against a rock near Orchomenus when he happened to see that Artemis bathing in a stream not far off and stayed to watch, lest he should afterwards dare boast to his companions that she had displayed herself naked in his presence. She changed him into a stag and, with his own pack of 40 hounds, tore him to pieces. Footers. 1. The maiden of the silver bow, whom the Greeks enrolled in the Olympian family, was the youngest member of the Artemis triad, Artemis being one more title of the triple moon goddess, and had a right, therefore, to feed her hinds on trefoil, a symbol of Trinity. Her silver bow stood for the new moon, yet the Olympian Artemis was more than a maiden. Elsewhere, at Ephesus, for instance, she was worshipped in her second person as nymph, an orgiastic Aphrodite, an orgiastic Aphrodite with a male consort, and the date palm, stag, and bee for her principal emblems. Her midwifery belongs rather to the crone, as do her arrows of death, and the 9-year-old priestesses are a reminder that the moon's death number is 3 times 3. She recalls the Cretan lady of the wild things, apparently the supreme nymph goddess of archaic totem societies, and the ritual bath in which Actaeon surprised her. Like the horned hinds of her chariot and the quails of Ortega, seems more appropriate to the nymph than the maiden. Actaeon was, it seems, a sacred king of the pre-Hellenic stag cult, torn to pieces at the end of his reign of 50 months, namely half a great year, his co-king, or Tanist, reigning for the remainder. The nymph properly took her bath after, not before, the murder. There are numerous parallels to this ritual custom in Irish and Welsh myth. And as late as the 1st century A.D., a man dressed in a stag's skin was periodically chased and killed on the Arcadian Mount Licinium. The hounds will have been white with red ears like the hounds of hell in Celtic mythology. There was a 5th horned hind which escaped Artemis. 2. The myth of her pursuit by Alpheus seems modeled on that of his hopeless pursuit of Arethusa, which turned her into a spring and him into a river, and may have been invited to account for the gypsum, or white clay, with which the priestesses of Artemis, Aletheia at Latrine and Ortega daubed their faces in honor of the white goddess. Alph denotes both whiteness and cereal produce. Alphos is leprosy. Alphi is gain. Alphaton is pearl barley. Alphato was the white grain goddess as Sao. Artemis's most famous statue at Athens was called the White Browed. The meaning of Artemis is doubtful. It may be strong-limbed, from Artemis, or she who cuts up, since the Spartans called her Artemis, from Erato, or the lofty converter, from Ero and Themis, or the Themis syllable may mean water, because the moon was regarded as the source of all water. 3. Ortega, Quail Island near Delos, was also sacred to Artemis. 4. The myth of Callisto has been told to account for the 2 small girls dressed as she-bears who appeared in the first Attic festival of Broronian Artemis, and for the traditional connection between Artemis and the Great Bear. But an earlier version of the myth may be presumed in which Zeus seduced Artemis, although the first transformed herself into a bear and then daubed her face with gypsum in an attempt to escape him. Artemis was originally the ruler of the stars, but lost them to Zeus. 5. Why Brontes had his hair plucked out is doubtful. Callimachus may be playfully referring to some well-known picture of the event in which the paint had worn away from the Cyclops' chest. 6. As Lady of Wild Things, or patroness of all the totem clans, Artemis had been annually offered a living holocaust of totem beasts, birds, and plants, and this sacrifice survived in classical time at Petra, a Caledonian city. She was there called Artemis Laphria. At Messene, a similar burnt sacrifice was offered to her by the Curtes as totem clan representatives, and another is recorded from Hierapolis, where the victims were hung to the trees of an artificial forest inside the goddess's temple. 7. The olive tree was sacred to Athene, the date palm to Isis, and Lat, a middle Minoan bead seal in my possessions shows the goddess standing beside a palm, dressed in a palm leaf skirt, and with all small palm tree held in her hand, she watches a New Year bull calf being born from a date cluster. On the other side of the tree is a dying bull, evidently the royal bull of the old year. All right.